Grand afternoon. Why some need me to be dumb, wrong and stupid. ARC. True Brit News. I'm recording this episode to place a clear and calm record into the public domain. This episode documents the issuing and service of notices of awareness to trustees and public office holders in relation to estates, trusts and public authority. These notices were issued under common law principles, restorative justice frameworks and international instruments, including the United Nations Declarations of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. The purpose of these notices is not confrontation, accusation or enforcement. Their purpose is transparency, lawful inquiry and restoration of balance where historic and ongoing trusteeship affects living heirs, families and communities. In any modern systems, trustees and public officers exercise authority on behalf of others. Under common law, that authority is not assumed. It must be accountable, evidenced and exercised in good faith. A notice of awareness simply places trustees on notice that living beneficiaries exist, that the trust relationship is known, and that transparency is requested. A notice of awareness is not a demand or a threat or a legal seizure. It is a lawful communication that says, I'm aware of this trust, I assert standing and I invite transparency. In common law, notice is foundational. Once notice is served, silence or refusal to respond has meaning. The notice also includes a QUO WARRANTO INQUIRY, a Latin phrase meaning by what authority. This simply asks, by what lawful warrant does an institution or officer or agent continue to act? Very relevant actually, considering what's going on in the world at the moment in terms of the release of the Epstein papers. It's not so much, anyway, I'll get back to this. I was going to try and weave that kind of stuff in, but anyway, I won't do that. This inquiry is especially relevant following the 2023 Vatican repudiation of the doctrine of discovery and early ecclesiastical directives placing personal accountability on officers exercising authority over lands, estates and peoples. Again, you can sort of see some of this being played out in regards to Trump's claim to Greenland, okay, and who's disputing it. It is also relevant under UNDRIP, which affirms Indigenous peoples' rights and lands, resources, redress and self-determination. For the purpose of transparency, I now state the recipients of the notices of awareness that have been served. Notices were issued to trustees associated with the Renewal Trust, Megan Wallace in her professional capacity with Megan and Bates and Weston Accountants, the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood in her public office capacity. These notices were issued not because of personal grievance, but because of institutional roles. I mean, I would add to that, they were done under, again, sort of seeking lawful authority to justify misprision, kidnapping, and a few other violations that have been conducted upon myself in public office. Okay, and also in terms of the renewal trust, about them doing what it is that they are supposed to do in terms of like benefiting the community. So I'll say a little bit more about that later on. Trustees, accountants and public officers occupy fiduciary positions where estates, trusts or public authority intersect with living heirs and communities. Transparency is not optional, it is fundamental. I state clearly, no allegation or wrongdoing is made in this recording. And I'm going to stick with that, given and in the context of what has been revealed and how these fiduciary expectations and obligations by institutions have, because of their misuse and their violations in public office, that they have caused harm, injury and loss. So these notices invite lawful clarification, documentation and dialogue, which is actually one of the things that's going on now. I recorded the process of preparing, sealing and posting the notices under common law service matters. I'm going to be saying or showing a little bit more. I might insert a picture of me sort of putting the notices in their envelopes and posting them off, which I may have already done that already in anticipation of this. So, grand afternoon. True Brit News, ARC, why some need me to be dumb, wrong and stupid. This is a public notice to the, or what would be described as the West Indian Caribbean descendant survivors of the Windrush generation, that I, Norman of the family Wright, descendants of the Williamson and Johnson clan and Barrett, have sent a notice out to, as a notice of awareness, as you can see here, and I'm just, as I'm doing this as a public notice to say that I and many others are, if you like, 5/5 competent, not incompetent and imbecile, and are ready to, as the notice says, it's a notice of awareness and lawful intent to resume restorative stewardship of the renewal trust. So this is just a notice to say this and some evidence of that. Actually, this is what I'm going to do. So this is the letter. That handwriting because I haven't got a printer. So just doing this as a recording, so a record of the notice that's been served. Also, I'm doing the same thing to Shabana Mahmood as well, sending her a copy of this. And it's also identifies or sort of celebrates or proclaims my Indigenous Aboriginal. This envelope is going in, so off to the post office to post them. This is the envelope for Shabana. Excuse the handwriting. That's to Mr. Harris, one of the trustees of the Renewal Trust. So yeah, that was just a quick kind of notice to say that I've noticed. I might stitch it with another one as I'm posting them off into the letterbox, just as a way of serving notice. Till next time, may your ERP and your spirituality remain strong. I'm gone. Service creates constructive notice, meaning that once property properly delivered, awareness is presumed. This documentation, those notices that I sent out, exist to show good faith, peaceable conduct, and procedural correctness. There is no secrecy, no ambush, and no hostility, only record, notice, and honour. It is important to say what this process is for. It is not about trying to overthrow It's not about punishment, and it's not about blame. It is about restoration of relationship, of trust, of lawful balance, and restoration of a dual title. UNDRIP, Article 28 speaks of redress. Article 40 of UNDRIP speaks of fair procedures and effective remedies. Restoration does not always mean the return of land, but it can, and actually because of a allodial title, that's actually what it does potentially mean. Restoration does not always mean return of land, I've just said that. Sometimes it means recognition, accounting, stewardship, access or protection, and or compensation. Trust law at its core is about care. Where care has drifted from accountability, restoration begins with notice. The notices allow time for response. If responses are received, they will be considered carefully and respectfully. If no responses are received, that silence becomes part of the public record. You can't go around ignoring people, actually. This podcast episode itself now forms part of that record. I invite listeners to read the United Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples for themselves. I invite trustees and public officers to respond in writing, in peace and in good faith. And I invite the public to understand the lawful process does not begin with conflict. It begins with the notice, which it has. This recording is made without malice or mischief, in sincerity and in honour, and for the purpose of transparency, restoration and truth. Thank you. And this notice has been put out by myself, by me, Norman, of the family right, clan of Williamson and Johnson, line of Orsett, sovereign.